Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to my channels. We are live on both channels today on True Crimes of Scientology and, of course, on Nora Knows. Thank you guys for tuning in for this Sunday morning stream. For those of you out there who, I have the same lawyer as Mindy. So somebody got a little confused out there in the universes, but it's just me and my lawyer today. But we're going to be talking and if you guys have general questions uh, for the lawyer, but I want to make a full disclaimer right now. Okay, my lawyer is not in any way, shape, or form going to be giving legal advice that is actionable anywhere. Please consult your own lawyer. This is just for general information. This is not a law class. So please, do with the information at your own caution here. Okay. So without further ado, guys, let me bring up the one, the only Merritt Mckeon. Thank you for being here, Merritt.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Now, Merritt, before we get into like general law stuff, I want to, I know you did an interview with Mindy and she talked to you a little bit about your history, but
Yeah.
just for my audience who may have not seen that interview, just give us like, the how did you get into law? Let's just, what happened? What brought you to the law in general?
Oh, okay. Well, believe me, I never really thought about becoming a lawyer. I was a mother with three little kids, and I was in battered women's shelters in Portland, Oregon. Great city. I love Oregon. I really do. And I was just trying to get away from their dad, who was very abusive to me. And he abducted the children to Iran after a court in Los Angeles gave him temporary custody. And
Wow.
yeah, it was a mess. And so when he finally took the kids to Iran and we all show up in court, I'm just like, this is insane.
Yeah.
This is so stupid. I had a lawyer, he had a lawyer, and I was dressed really nicely for court. My attorney looked literally like a bag lady. And I'm there, and the judge kept asking me, "Is your client okay?" And I'm like, "I am the mother, Your Honor.
I'm
I
the client.
am the client. This is my attorney." And she's like, "Yes, Your Honor, I am her attorney." And I'm going, "Oh my God." And so I challenged her one day and she looked at me and she goes, "You're not an attorney. You don't know anything." I said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. Let me just tell you something. I am the client. You are my attorney. And if you can be an attorney, I can be an attorney." And she goes, "Oh, you could never be an attorney." And giving me all these reasons. And I'm looking at her and I'm going, "Oh
Wow.
my God, she's so crazy." Anyone can be an attorney if they're intelligent enough and if they're willing to work hard for it.
Right.
So I became an attorney and I eventually got my children back and helped change several laws like federal law and some of the laws in California regarding child custody and domestic violence. I'm very proud of my work. Um, doesn't make a lot of money, but you know what? If you really love your work, it really, uh, as long as you can feed yourself and have a roof over your head and you're happy, it's worth a lot.
Absolutely. Well, you've changed a lot of people's lives, Merritt. I know that you're being very humble right now, but you've done a lot of incredible law work. You've changed laws. You worked for a number of years at the Nicole Brown Foundation, helping other, survivors get justice. So it's, you have an impressive dossier, an impressive resume, of actions that you've done, and what is irony right now is that you're in this realm of Scientology, which of course in itself is like
Which
nuts.
I
It's
don't
so
know anything about it
right,
except, going out to family court in Hemet where they've got that big compound and it's
right.
all like locked with barbed wire and everything. And that's all I really know. I mean,
Yeah.
And I go to the Kaiser in Los Angeles sometimes, and it's right
Yeah.
across from the Scientology thing. And
Yeah.
the Kaiser has a great cafeteria, by the way.
They do. They do.
They do.
I've been at that. I'm also a Kaiser member, so I'm familiar with that hospital. Um, but you know, it's what's interesting is that the chaos that you have like dipped your toes into, domestic violence, and now this kind of protesting Scientology field that has drawn in. Would you say, just from like your experience, would you say that this chaos tends to draw in people who want to like expand the chaos? Would that be something that we're like experiencing as people who are in
Well,
this?
yeah, I mean, in general, it's like it's the Scientology thing is something that I really know nothing about, but I can see the people who have experienced Scientology as children, and they've gotten out, and then their kids are still, or their parents are still involved, or their
Sure.
siblings, or whatever. It's so traumatic.
Yeah.
It's just something that is, um, I can compare it to, I lived in Iran for about 8, 9 years during the war. And
Wow.
it's a lovely culture, lovely people.
Oh yeah.
Trust me, I would never trash Persian, Iranian culture, history, society, anything. But there would be times like if a person changed their religion, it's a death penalty if you leave Islam, and that's it. But if you're, for example, if you're Jewish and you convert to Islam in Iran, you kind of lose contact with your family of origin,
Right.
and hopefully it works out in the marriage. And I saw a lot of marriages did work out, a lot of situations where people were very happy to convert. And but that threat of, well, you better not change your mind,
Yeah.
that is something that I just do not at all on any level get. I mean, I'm your basic brown paper wrapper generic Christian. I mean, I just like love everybody, do your thing and be nice to people and love God. And that's, it's a little more detailed, but really, I don't push myself and I don't judge people.
Sure.
But seems like as a religion, it seems very problematic that there's so many people who are traumatized.
Yeah. I mean, you would think that statistic alone would be a deterrent for newer members, or even for investigations to take place into the validity of it as a religion, because,
Yeah,
on its face, you go like, where are all the happy people? Where's all the good stuff? And it seems lacking in that, right?
yeah. Well, I guess there's some movie stars who are very happy with it, but I don't
Allegedly.
know. But, here's the thing. I don't judge people for their choices, but if it affects their children, then I think you got to look at it like you've got all those um, very, very traditional offshoots of the Latter-day Saint Mormon
Right.
Church,
Yeah.
FLDS. I mean, it's obvious child abuse,
Oh, yeah.
obvious circumvention of state law. They're
Yeah.
building their things, their compounds on like borders between 4 states so that they could just run over to one state or another if somebody
Can't catch
comes
me.
in. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, there's got to be something. But it's like the problem with getting the federal government in on investigating a religion, like is it a valid religion or not, that just kind of wipes out a lot of the First Amendment stuff that we treasure in this country. So all that I can say is that the voices of people who have been freed from a trap of a cult need to be heard. All those voices need to be heard, whatever awful situation they were in. And, I'm not, I just can't judge. And I don't know very much about it, but I have met people who they're obviously been traumatized. And I wish so much that they could just find healing and support and be able to help others get free, but we just live in such a harsh society. It's like,
Yeah.
God, you should just be so grateful if you're not homeless, right? It's like, well, we live in a very harsh economy. We live in a very harsh society. You miss a paycheck, you can't feed your kids, your food stamps are cut. Gee, we're
Yeah.
going to take your kids away. And it's like, no, we should be feeding people and making sure that there's have safe housing, at least a minimum. But that's my opinion.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I check all those boxes too, Merritt. So today we want to, guys, this is, and like I said, we're going to ask questions, but also this, I'm going to be honest, it's a bit of a fundraiser because this beautiful lady right here needs to be paid money because she's very hardworking and she's doing a very, very good job for me and for Mindy. I'll just, compliment both cases. But it's a lot of work, guys. What I've found out diving into this area of law and reading statutes and trying to figure out what applies, what doesn't apply, how to work. This is very complicated. This is why people spend a lot of time in college learning the law, because it's a lot. It's not just like one thing. It's not just like this little cute, meme or fortune cookie, right? It is very complicated and it has to be interpreted correctly and all of that kind of stuff. So it does require a degree. So my fundraiser is up. There's the QR code over there at the top of the screen, and my mods will drop that in the chat, and we'll pimp that out. But also my Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, all of that stuff. If you guys can, help us out, that would be amazing. Because here, we'll do this. There we go. No, I don't like that one. We're gonna go back to the other thing. That didn't work out. There we go. There we go. Now we got all three things on the screen here. So just to put it in your face, send me money. Okay, I did that. That's my pimp out. So we have thank you, Rox, for putting that up. We'll put that up here. That's the GoFundMe down there. And we already have a question that I think is a good question here from Erie Forever. She's asking, do you think that it serves you to not know everything about Scientology, that it gives you perspective and allows you to see the law in black and white? Or do you have
Well, I'm representing two people in a case that has there's a small connection, but it's really not a part of the case.
right.
So, not knowing very much about Scientology doesn't really help me or hurt me in this case. In this case, these cases have been a real learning curve for learning more about online bullying and the extent of the First Amendment and civil harassment law. So, like, at, I I'm always interested in other cultures and other religions, and I'm sure that I will be reading more about Scientology. I'm just not, that's not really my focus in this case. My focus in this case is getting a protective order for Nora and defending against one. And for Mindy, is just getting her restraining order. So that's it.
And
That's
let's talk about restraining orders, because I think that I know I'll speak for myself. I did not fully understand um the extensiveness of the, you know what I mean? Like, it seemed pretty cut and dried to me. Like, you go in, you say, this is happening to me. This person has done X, Y, and Z, and I want them to leave me alone. Right. And so it seems like it would just be like, oh my God, that's crazy. Okay, that person has to leave you alone now forever. But even when you get the temporary thing where the initial person who reads your complaint says, "Okay, this sounds legit. We're going to talk about it more." It's interesting to me that then there's this whole like kind of conversation that happens between you, whoever's petitioning for it, the petitioner, the judge, and the person that you're trying to obtain the order against the respondent. And it's kind of this whole like everybody gets to tell their side,
Yeah.
and present evidence, right, with or without an attorney. But
Yeah. Which is really kind of great because uh, it's set up for people who are not represented by an attorney, which is a very nice thing. Like if somebody is threatening you or
Mhm,
harassing you, or you're afraid of them because they're keep, I don't know, throwing water balloons at your wall at night. But
sure.
you can get protective order and it can be set. But if both sides are lawyered up, so to speak, then it can get a little bit, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think, a lot of people there's a whole debate, I think, amongst the streamers, the protesters, like the validity of a lawyer in cases or not. And now my personal feeling on this is I feel like because I have young people that are going to college and things like that. I've had a lot of debates with my kids about college and its necessity or not necessity, right? And for many professions, I don't think that a college degree is necessary. However,
Right.
there are specific professions that I think absolutely, if you don't have a college degree, I'm not dealing with you. I'm not going to go see a doctor who's like, watch some TikToks on how to do something, right? And it's like, well, on this TikTok, this person was like, ginkgo biloba is the cure for that. And I'm like, nah, I'm going to go see a medical doctor who's like done,
Right.
med school, right? It's the same thing with a lawyer. Like, you can't know everything. First of all, not no lawyer knows everything about the law. That's
Right.
that's that's facts, because once you learn the general practice of law, and correct me if I'm wrong, then you go into like your specialty. Like you could have gone into like corporate law, or you could have gone
Yeah.
into
No, I couldn't have. I could not have done that.
not for you, but I'm just saying there's different niches. There's like tax law, there's corporate law, there's
Right.
criminal law, there's all these little like you can be an environmental lawyer, all of these things which then you focus on the laws regarding that specific area, and like you hone in on that. Is that more or less how it
Well,
works?
yes and no. Like some people, they do criminal and family there
Mm,
because there can be a crossover. But civil harassment law is kind of like, it's such a tiny part of anyone's practice, but it's
right.
very different. Like I do mostly family law, so domestic violence. But domestic violence, while it has similarities to civil harassment,
Mm,
they're like different planets. We were talking about that earlier.
yeah,
That it's they're like the sun and the moon. They're both,
right.
I guess, planets, but they're sort of like very different and they
One has
behave
rings and the other
differently,
one doesn't.
right? Or something like that. But they're similar, like a dog.
Mm. I lost you, Merritt. She got frozen. Unless we Can you guys hear me? I'm gonna come back here. I'm gonna try to put Merritt back in here in a second. Nope, she's still frozen. Let's see. Yeah, you guys are still there. Um, nope, she's still frozen. Okay, here she is. I guess she's coming back. All right, here we go. There's Merritt. She's back. Okay.
No, I did not take a bathroom break.
So let's finish up what you were saying there, Merritt.
Okay, well, for example, a domestic violence restraining order, you can get that against a romantic partner, a
Mhm.
spouse, a former spouse, the parent of your child. You can get it against someone who's like a parent or a grandparent or vice versa. There's all kinds of relationships, but there has to be that sort of family type relationship.
I see. Some sort of like intimate relationship that isn't just like a coworker. You couldn't do that with.
Right.
Okay.
And then for a coworker, you could possibly get a workplace restraining order against them if it was
Mhm.
really bad. But in civil harassment, it could be a perfect stranger who just for some reason targets you. Um, one of my first cases I ever did as an attorney was civil harassment, and it was a guy who was I represented the civil harasser, and he had just gone off. He just went off on a bunch of coworkers, all of whom were women, and they were terrified of him. And so he really felt bad, and he was very apologetic, and he knew he wasn't going to get his job back because,
Mm.
he did this all at work. So I was able to get a stipulation, an agreement between the two parties that he would not contact, he would not go to the workplace, and that if he did, they could bring the order again and that it would be granted
Right.
because he admitted he did it, but he needed to be able to find work.
Yeah.
And he was truly repentant. I mean, he was crying and he just felt like dirt. And so I was able to communicate that to them and say, obviously, he hired me to communicate that to you, and let's just do it. And we got a stipulation. Never heard from them again, but
There you go.
I
And
was
see, and that's
friends. Yeah, I was friends with his with someone who referred me, and they said that he was very happy, and he
oh good.
never did the same thing again to anyone
There you
because he
go.
learned his lesson.
And
Okay,
that's I mean, I
so
think the law can definitely work like that, but let's talk about that aspect for a minute because
yeah,
there's a good question that I want to get to, but um when a, like people say, "Oh, it's just a restraining order." Like who cares? Right? If a restraining order is granted, what are some of the consequences that can occur for the individual who has
wow.
that granted against them?
A lot. Okay, because it's a CLETS order. It goes into the law. In California, we have CLETS.
Mhm.
It's some kind of a California law enforcement database
Mhm.
so that if you're pulled over on a freeway and they check your name and everything, and if you are someone who has a klutz order against them and you're within 50 yards or 100 yards of where the person who's protected is living,
Mhm.
they can arrest you, even if you're just, they just pulled you over. So, and also if you want to be a teacher, or you want to be a babysitter, or you want to take care of elderly people, or
Mhm.
you want to get a job in a hospital, whatever it is that you want to do about working with people, it will show up on a background search.
Mhm.
Now, for a lot of jobs, it doesn't matter. I mean, I've worked in places where um, reportedly a lot of people had a lot of domestic violence restraining orders and stuff like that against them, but they were doing their job, and so it didn't matter
Yeah.
for that job. But yeah, it can really, and let's say you're romantically involved with someone and they do a background search, which is never really a bad idea, by the way. It's like, trust me, I sometimes see people wanting to marry former people that I know a lot about, and I'm like, oh, just maybe just do one of those $100 background searches on
Yeah.
on that person. But if there's a klutz order, it'll show up. And it can even show up on your credit report. So, uh, and then why would you be restrained if you haven't done something? If you haven't threatened somebody, if you
Right.
haven't done something which is not just insulting, but really gross and violent words.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Hey, if I insult somebody, uh, which I always try to avoid doing anyway, it's just not my nature. But if I insult someone, you know, hey, uh, I'm sorry I insulted you, but that's not going to get you a civil harassment restraining order against
Right.
me.
Yeah. No, 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 exactly, exactly.
You know,
And, yeah. And when you're on the internet, I think people tend to forget that people say mean things, right? And I think there's a
yeah,
difference, and I think this is the classification that we really have to understand when we're speaking on the internet. There's a difference between saying mean things, to make fun of somebody, right? Like calling me fat as an example. Okay. I am a fluffy lady. Like that's a fact. That's not actionable. I can't get a restraining order because somebody's like, "You're a fat bitch." Right? Like, okay, that's your opinion, right? I mean, you know what I mean? Like there are certain things where it's not that doesn't rise to the state
right,
statute, right? So it has to be some form, especially in like a civil restraining order, you have to feel, fear for your own
yeah,
personal safety or the safety of, your household or both or, that
right,
kind of a thing. So it's not something this is not something that is meant to be idle or just like, because you have some spare time to be like, I don't like that person. Like you don't have to like everybody. That's not the law. The law doesn't say we
right,
have to like.
yeah. But if you try to get a restraining order and you don't have a good reason,
What's the consequence for
the
that?
courts, well, you may have to pay the other person's legal fees. But the nice thing is that there will be a record of it in the court that you tried and you put on your evidence. You didn't have the evidence. And so, they have a law in California that you can get someone found to be a vexatious litigant,
Mhm.
and that's for filing 5 actions as a pro per in a certain number of years. I think it's 7 years. And if you filed in pro per, whether it was in small claims court or civil harassment or family court for a domestic violence order or a civil lawsuit pro per,
Yeah, it
and
says here a vexatious litigant in California is someone who repeatedly files unmeritorious motions, conducts unnecessary discovery, or continues to litigate cases that have been finally determined against them. To be officially declared a vexatious litigant, a person must meet specific criteria, such as having at least 5 cases in the last 7 years that were determined against them, or frequently filing frivolous lawsuits. Once a court issues a pre filing order against a person, they are placed on a list maintained by the Judicial Council and must seek court permission to file new lawsuits. So, getting declared a vexatious litigant is also serious because if you're just, being the Oprah of lawsuits in California, you're going to get shut down. And then let's say something really bad does happen to you, like a legitimate thing that you should be able to file a lawsuit. Now you got to go ask Mother May I to the court
yeah.
to see if you could even file that, you know?
Right, right. And you do have to ask. But you see, with civil harassment, if somebody is literally showing up at your house for no reason with a shotgun and screaming at you, call the police.
Yes.
Police will come and they'll give you usually an emergency protective order, an EPO. You take that to the courthouse and you talk to the presiding judge and you say, here's my paperwork. I need to file this civil harassment. And
Right.
here's my EPO. And it's going to run out in 10 days. Then yeah, they'll say, oh, heck yeah, here's your letter.
Right.
Go ahead and file it. But
Yeah.
see, unless it's something like that, then you're going to have to really explain yourself about why you need a civil harassment restraining order. It kind of puts the brakes on people. But there are quite a few people on that list in California, at least two of whom are attorneys.
Wow. That's crazy. That is
I know.
crazy.
I know. Don't you think that maybe, just maybe, um, there should be a rule that, if you're an attorney and a vexatious litigant, that maybe you should lose your license.
Right? Like, I think the
But
state
there's
bar should
not.
take your license. You should have to go do, like, reschooling or something, you know what I mean?
I-
Like, and you should minimally have to take the bar again, like, minimum. You should have to take the bar again.
Oh no, that would be cruel and unusual punishment. Trust me.
Yeah, the
Nobody
California
wants to
guys,
put someone through that.
yeah, I mean, for those of you guys who don't know, the 2 hardest state bars in our country to get are California and New York. Those are the 2 most difficult, final exam, as it were. Like, you go through all this college, and you're like, "I'm a lawyer now." Just kidding, you're not really a lawyer until you pass whatever state you're gonna practice law in. You gotta pass their state exam, then the state says, "Okay, you can have a job now." It's kind of like, it's really crazy. I mean, no offense, but people who become lawyers are a little bit crazy because you don't even have any, like, guaranteed work, because now you have to pass this exam that's kind of insane. And some
Yeah,
people have to take, I mean, especially the California and New York bar, they have to take several times
awful.
before they pass it. And that's not an insult to them. It's just that the tests are insane, you know?
It is. It really is. That's why I'm like, no, don't make anybody take the bar again. But they have things like, maybe you got to get therapy for 6 months, or maybe you've got to, like, deal with your problem, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But no, there are at least two attorneys on that list.
That's funny. That's funny. Okay, I have a question from Gina here. Gina wants to know, Merritt, if needed, under the current threats of litigation, would you, Merritt, take on more clients who need help from someone using the law to harass? That is the question.
I'm not understanding. Are you saying, would I represent someone who is
Yes.
accused of harassing?
No, would you represent, let's say the petitioner in my case is filing more against other people who are out here, you know, doing our protesting and things like that. Would you be up for representing more people against any sort of litigation like that, restraining orders, or are you going to go back into retirement?
Well, I'm not really fully retired. I've still got, I mostly do appeals, and I mostly do family law. And these are the only two civil harassment cases that I have right now.
Right.
Um, I don't know. It's been very interesting, and I have a lot of compassion for literally everyone in this whole scenario. Everybody. I just think it's really a mess. But I'm not really interested in finding new cases. I get a lot of referrals from people, and then I just find people to refer them to. So,
Well, listen, I know that people out here definitely need help. And that's why, I mean, we're doing this fundraiser because, guys, the retainer for Merritt is 5 grand. That's one, two, three, four, $5,000. We've done a bit of that. We haven't done enough of that. We need to do more of that. And in order for, Merritt to be effective as a lawyer, it costs, everything that we do costs money, right? So as an example, to file a motion, right? You have to, that's time, which Merritt's time
right,
is worth money, but then you have to file it, and there's filing fees for each of the things that you put into the court.
right,
Okay.
right,
So, like, it's not just like Merritt is, greedy and she wants all this money because she feels like she deserves it, which is all true, except for she's not greedy. Um, it's that this is the other thing. Every single thing you do in court costs money, not just the lawyer's time. It is like every piece of paper that comes across a judge's desk has been stamped by a clerk, and you have to pay a fee for that clerk to be
yeah,
like, I got that, boom, and pass it on to the court. That stamp costs you money, and each different thing costs a different amount of money. It's not like every filing is like $5 or something like that.
well,
So,
no, it's more like they see in California, they like they have two levels of costs for filing a civil harassment restraining order. If it's civil harassment with violence, it's free. If there's no violence, it's like you pay several hundred
Right.
dollars. So, and I guess that's just because they figure, well, we really want to help the people first who are saying violence.
Right.
They're afraid for that they'll be physically harmed or something like that. But then you have to e-file everything unless you're going to run down to the court, which I'm not going to do because it's like a 2-hour drive. So, e-filing is like $20, and that's just how it goes. But it's not just filing, it's also your time, because there's a lot of background. A lot of people think it's just when an attorney is in court, like you
No.
go in the morning and you're there until 4 o'clock. Okay, that's a whole day.
Yep.
but but it's all you do much more work um on the computer, doing research, looking at other cases, trying to figure out the law, reading case law, reading the statute, trying to figure out, can they really do that? And then, if you don't think they can really do what they're trying to do, you got to file something to stop that. And so that research time and the time spent trying to piece together a jigsaw puzzle where some of the pieces just are never going to fit, all that time takes time. And so, you know, I am very, very grateful for donations that your supporters are giving, because it really does help me do my work.
Yeah.
It's just, I wish so much that I could help people. So I wanted to talk a little bit to help people who have to handle these cases by themselves. I have some suggestions.
Let's do it. What's the number one suggestion that you would say to people if they're going to do this all by themselves? And again,
Right.
this is just a suggestion. This is not legal advice from Merritt
Right.
right now. She's speaking from her expertise with decades of experience in the California court system. Okay, so what's the first thing you would do?
Okay. Well, the forms that you use are the Kletz order forms, and I wish that they would put them together on the California um, courts.ca.gov as a form package, but they don't. Okay, so they don't put that online. You just have to kind of go there and find there's a one form that says info.
Is
And
it
so
this
the
one here, the Criminal Protective Order, Domestic Violence, CLET,
no,
CPO, the CR
it's
160?
no, it's the civil harassment forms.
Civil harassment. Okay, let me.
Yeah. So you go to the civil harassment form sets, and there's just like so many forms. And right there, here you are, you're all stressed out. Someone's harassing you, someone's threatening your kid. You know, there's just something going on that is so frightening that you're literally thinking about going to court. So you want to Google information how to, because actually the Legal Aid Society of Los Angeles has a whole forms package that will tell you how to fill out the forms, which really helps. So if you're in LA County, that helps. And I don't
Mhm.
know if Orange County has that, but all of those forms packets help because you get everything downloaded at once. But then when you get them all filled out, you got to break them up because you got to file them separately. And for that, I would say if you can file stuff at the courthouse, you're probably better off just taking the day and doing that, if you can, because otherwise you got to file each form all by itself. Now,
Right. Right.
when you're filling out the forms, the most important thing is your story.
Mhm.
What happened? And if it's been going on like for like a long time, like a year or 6 months or something, it may be very traumatic. So this is the time when you take out a pad of paper and a pen and you just start trying to write down dates of when you remember things happening. And
Mhm.
if you can't remember the exact date that something happened, just put the month. I mean, some people are more traumatized than other, and they have difficulty, but working out that timeline of what has happened is very helpful.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most difficult things for me to do with someone who needs a civil harassment restraining order or a DV order, because they're just like, blah, that they're
Yeah.
traumatized. And you got to say, okay, now I realize that. Well, let's say, what was the first time he did this or she did this? And then you try to get those dates. And then, did you ever call the police? Maybe not. Maybe you did. Is there a weapon involved? Are you afraid that they're going to use a weapon? Do you know if they have a weapon? Because if you were ever threatened with gun violence or another kind of a weapon, like it doesn't have to be a firearm, you can say, look, they got out a little penknife, but I'm terrified of knives. And they kept popping it open when they were talking to me. And I
Right.
asked them to stop, and they just kept going. Right.
Right.
Stuff like that. Okay, now maybe you want to protect your pets. That's a new thing in California, where thank God the courts are recognizing how important pets are to people. So you can get a protective order on an animal and yourself, like a threat against poisoning a pet. That's just
Mm.
like so ugly.
Yeah, no, that's
So
awful.
yeah, so you can write on a separate piece of paper everything that happened. The form will have the most recent incident. And sometimes they give you this little bitty bit of space, and then they say you can just X here in this box and attach a piece of paper and keep writing about this incident. So generally, what I do and what most attorneys do is they do a declaration, where they just do a separate declaration, and then on the form where it's got like these little lines and stuff that are very hard to write into.
Oh, yeah, it's like a baby paragraph, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's not going to help. Just say, please see my declaration. Then in your declaration, you don't have to get into great detail. If there were threats, say what the threat was. And the beauty of online communications and tweets, or whatever they're calling those X things now,
Yeah.
uh, posts, Facebook posts, all those things, it's almost like for family lawyers, we're all like, I cannot believe that he is saying this or she is saying this
Yeah.
on Facebook, where everybody can print that thing out and take it into court, right? Same thing with civil harassment. So if you've got some proof that something has been said or done, a Ring camera, that's like golden, right? Because it's got a timestamp. The
Oh,
person's
sure.
standing there
Sure.
screaming obscenities, and whatever they're saying. This is not DoorDash delivering death threats. This is like a maniac that,
Yeah.
who can tolerate that? So you can even show that to a policeman, and you can say, look, so technology can work for you. And so you write this declaration, you say, on this date, at this time, this is what happened. She came to my house with a knife and threatened my cat, and told me that they were doing this because of something that I had done, last week while I was selling Girl Scout cookies with my child. Okay. I mean, get the judge's attention with something that actually is, when you pare it down, instead of saying, I was so emotionally abused by this. Well, obviously, it's like somebody does something weird, like showing up at your door and threatening your cat.
Yeah.
It's like, hopefully you've got one of those little video things.
Yeah,
But
it's
even
more
if
about
you
the
don't,
action that was done versus your reaction to the action that was done, right? So, and the
yeah,
the law wants to see what the action was.
Right.
You can talk about your reaction to it, how it affected you later in court, but for your declaration, you want to be very specific on just the actions that were done.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like you can sometimes try to go into so much detail
Mhm.
about your feelings or something. Just try to think to yourself, if you're a judge or a judicial assistant or something and you're reading 50 applications a day
Right.
for restraining orders, let's just make it a whole bunch, okay? It's probably not that many, but whatever. Day in, day out, that's your job, okay? And you're going to get a lot of stupid ones. They're like, well, neener, blah, blah.
Well,
He
like the
came,
one that we saw, I gave this as an example because it was interesting to me to see the judge. This woman tried to give evidence of harassment by saying, "Well, he walks by my camera every day and does this." And the judge was like, we all like laughed a little bit. The judge was like,
right, right.
Okay.
It's like,
Like that's not it's not he didn't pull out a pew pew and point it at your camera like and cock it and like do this." He was like So,
right. Maybe he just doesn't like you
yeah,
anymore.
I mean that's not against the law to be mad.
Right, right. But on the other hand, if she were a receptionist at a
Sure.
company and he were coming in every day and flipping her off like 2 feet away from her face,
That's different.
then you call security and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
but it's like, yeah, I mean, oh, and another thing that might be helpful for people, okay, so you do your declaration. And you read the statute. It's a long statute, but
Sure.
it's basically imminent threat of violence, or, really makes you think that this person could harm me. Um, and that's important because that that harm thing and the fear thing and the even if it's far fetched that they would be able to do it, it's just that's not okay. I like to say this, that if the person would not be able to say that about the president of the United States or the governor of their state
Mm,
or the mayor of their city or
right.
their child's kindergarten teacher, okay, whatever it is that the context is, if you wouldn't say that about someone who is an elected official or a judge, right, then it shouldn't be okay to say it about somebody else. And this includes a threat of violence. This
Right.
includes you know any uh, ideation that's spoken about, I want to kill this person or that person. That's just something that, like, really, that's what you tell your therapist, and your therapist might have to report you. No,
Yeah. No,
seriously.
yeah, if you're giving a credible threat of violence, then that eliminates the need for
Yeah,
the patient doctor confidentiality. In the same way, if
right.
somebody goes to a priest and is like, "I'm gonna go, murder all these people later today," they have an obligation to go to the police and be like, "Hey, watch out."
Yeah, in California, they even have it that if an attorney learns that their client is planning to harm someone, like, and it's
Yeah.
credible because, maybe they've harmed somebody and you know about it because
Yeah.
you're their
You're
attorney.
their attorney, you kinda know
You
stuff, yeah.
have to do something. Now, in California, this is the one area you don't have to tell anyone, but you may do it and you will not lose your bar license. And to
Mm,
me, I'm like, you can have my bar license. I'm not going to stand by while some maniac that I just happen to be representing threatens, you
yeah.
know, to commit acts of violence against someone. I'm just not going to do that. The code says that I'm allowed to do that. You better believe it. I'm
Yeah.
like,
No,
I'm their
100%.
former Girl Scout. Sorry. But so I guess getting back to what is actionable speech, what is the speech? Okay, there's the old case of First Amendment that you cannot stand up in a crowded movie theater and yell fire if there's no fire,
Right.
because people will rush out, people will get hurt.
Right.
And there you are sitting there like, ha ha, I'm just making a joke. It's like, no,
Yeah.
that's, you know, and so they're just, it's not just about you should be nice on the internet, just like anywhere. Well, sometimes we're not going to be nice. And sometimes we're going to say things that'll hurt people's feelings. And I'm sorry about that. But, uh, you can't shoot somebody down with a civil harassment restraining order for that.
Yeah.
But threats of violence. So if you have Facebook posts that are, you know, threatening and everything else, or an email. Somebody emails you and says, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, slap that baby on to your, and say in the declaration on such and such a date, so and so emailed me, and this is what they said.
Right.
It's like, whoa, the things that people will say is just like mind boggling. But you want to make sure that it's not pages and pages and pages. You just want to say, and however many pages it takes, 5 to 10 pages is probably pretty good, and maybe some exhibits. And you can scan them. And there are even apps that you can use with your iPhone so that you can scan and put it all together as one form.
Hmm.
But that's key and critical to get your temporary restraining order, because you want that temporary restraining order. And then as far as giving service, if you have a good address or you think it's a good address, you can have a process server make an attempt. Or if you have two good addresses, or if they go to the first address and they say, oh, they're just not here, then you're going to have another attempt.
And every
But
attempt costs money, guys. Every attempt, and it depends
right,
on the process server, is about $150 for them
right,
to do it, because it's not just them showing up trying to hand the papers. They also do paperwork, the process servers, on
right,
all of the information on what happened during the attempt of service, right? Because all of this
right.
is a legal. Serving somebody is a legal proceeding. It's not just, I mean, you can have somebody who's not involved in the case just literally
Sure,
walk up
sure.
and be like, hey, are you Joe Blow? And they say, yeah, I'm Joe Blow. And then they hand them the paper and say, you've been served, and they walk away, and that's it. And nowadays you have to take photos and show that the person has it and things like that. I mean, back in the 80s, my dad was a private investigator, and he used to use me to like serve random people
Oh my
papers when I was a
God.
child. Not legal, it was the 80s, kind of the Wild West. But yeah. That would be our like father-daughter bonding time. Like, hey, let's go get a frosty and play in the park. And then just happened to be where this guy, I don't know who he was, that my dad would throw the frisbee next to and be like, okay, pick up the frisbee and ask if that's the guy. And then he would like tape the service papers underneath the frisbee so I could like peel it off and hand it to the guy. It was a whole
Oh my God.
whole
That's
thing.
incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Wild times.
Well,
Nobody's doing that now,
but
guys.
all right, getting back to California. Finally, because people were evading service especially on domestic violence and civil harassment orders. They were just very, very tough. And, people don't have money, and
Mm,
they can't really get their friends to do this.
right.
It's like, would you go and serve Charlie? Charlie? No, Charlie's got a gun. I'm not doing
Right.
that.
Exactly.
Right. So what they finally did, thank goodness, was they made a law that you can do alternative service. So if you show due diligence, you show that this person is not there at this address, and that's the only address that I have in the district where they filed. But here's a good email address for the person,
Mhm.
or the court may have an address somewhere. I don't know. So you can ask for alternative service. And in most cases, if you've made a diligent effort and you've done your best, the court will allow you to serve by email. And it's kind of a new procedure in family court, but the newer judges are a lot more with it. And they're like, they know why that's the law. They
Yeah.
know it's
Yeah.
because people are evading. So once a person shows up in court, they've waived any defect in service.
Right.
I mean, yeah, you can go in and say, I'm personally appearing and I'm not going to answer because I was not served and my friend told me about this. And it's like in civil harassment cases, they're just going to go, well, you're here now, so I'm just going to have the bailiff serve you.
Yeah.
Thank you for wasting my time. This is not the way to get the judge on your side.
And
Okay.
let's talk about that procedure. So once you have been served with a restraining order or
Right.
you serve somebody else, what like are the provisos on what does contact mean at that moment? Because the restraining order generally restricts parties from contacting each other, right?
Right.
So what does that
So,
mean in today's world? What does
well,
contact mean? I'm just letting my dog
okay.
in. I'm listening.
That means don't email them, don't call them, don't have a third party call them to try to talk that person out of what they're doing. Um, uh, you know, if you hire an attorney to defend you, you want to make sure you're hiring an attorney that does know something about this area of law.
Right.
This is not an area for a pit bull unless it's a domestic violence situation. You really didn't do it. And in fact, you're the victim, in which case, I fully approve of, hire someone who's just absolutely, but someone who's competent
Right.
with a good background. And you don't want somebody who'll go in there and have no clue. It's their first case that they've ever done. They've never done it
Right.
because civil harassment. Here's the difference between civil harassment and domestic violence cases: two different trails, two different statutes. Statutes. Okay, so you've got your civil harassment allows hearsay
Mm,
as evidence. Also, very informal. The proceedings are much less formal. So you can usually put on evidence unless it's totally irrelevant. If it gets to the point where the judge is like, I have seen video of this where this person is saying the same thing. I've seen 5 different videos. It's enough.
right. I don't
Okay.
need to see
Hey,
25
great.
videos of that.
Right. So it's like you can say I have 25 videos. I've picked up out the 2 best ones. And it's helpful too if you have transcripts. And it's particularly helpful if they're long transcripts to identify where in the video it is so that you can play the video. And some courts will allow you to use what's called an Elmo, which is like a projector where you put your cell phone down on the Elmo, and you play the portion. Like, you don't want to play a 2-hour video. The judge is going to just go,
No.
absolutely, nope, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
But if you've got a transcript and you've got a segment and it's only going to take 5 minutes or less,
Right.
show it. They're very effective. And another thing you can do if you want to know how to prepare for presenting your case, go to the court on a different day when the court is hearing cases. You don't want to go when they're just hearing motions or they're just, they're on vacation or something. Go down, make sure you know where to park, where to go and where the courtroom is, and just sit there. And you can even check in with and just say, look, I'm just here as a member of the public and I want to get informed about procedures. So just say, sit down. I used to teach
Because these
law
are all
school.
public. These are public
Right.
cases. They are not
Or,
private. This is all like if you guys look
right.
up my name in the California Supreme, civil cases, you're going to find this case. That both
Right.
cases the one I'm defending myself against, I'm the respondent in. You're not a
Right.
defendant in a civil case. I had to learn that. And then the one I'm the petitioner in.
Oh, you can also, you can observe by Zoom and in Los Angeles. And so
Mhm.
you can just go to the Los Angeles. Best thing to do is just Google, like, I'm going to use Orange County as an example. Orange County Superior Court
Mhm.
Zoom hearings, and it'll take you to this page. And then there's a little link on it, and then there's a list of courtrooms, and you click on the courtroom, and it will eventually ask you, like, well, if you're not an attorney representing a party and you're not a party, who are you? And it'll say
Mhm.
witness and everything, and then there'll be other. Hit other. Eventually, you'll get to the clerk, and the clerk will be like, what? And you can say, I just wanted to observe. Well, it's a public courtroom, and unless there's a reason like that there's a minor involved or that
Right.
there's going to be extremely sensitive testimony where the court might say, I just don't think we really need the public, or they'll just clear the courtroom and they'll shut off Zoom.
Right.
And this has happened where there's just some really just heartbreaking testimony about sexual stuff. And, nobody needs to hear that. And nobody needs to know that they're testifying about something very, personal.
Yeah.
So, and this is really a wonderful thing about the courts is that they are very, very sensitive these days, which I really applaud. So, but you can watch someone's proceedings and you can see what the judge in your case is like
Right.
and how they handle evidence. Now, generally, you have to exchange evidence that you're going to be using, and that is usually done through email. And you can have an evidence book that's traditional with most trials. And if you're going to have a book of evidence, you have to usually have a copy for the other side and one for the court. And if you have a witness, one for the witness. And of course, you have your own copy.
Right.
And so it gets a little bit more detailed. Like if you have 25 exhibits, you number them. And some courts require you to have exhibit tags, but they don't have that in Los Angeles. You just kind of write the number on it and you have an exhibit list. So exchange exhibit lists and exhibits. But usually if both people are pro per, it's more like just exchange your evidence.
Right.
And you can ask the sheriff to, you just say, here's my evidence that I want to give the other side, and there's a restraining order. And so the sheriff would then help exchange, but that would usually be kind of like on a break or just before a break, that everybody gets a chance to see the evidence. So, but then there's something called rebuttal evidence, okay? And this is one of these attorney secrets. Okay. Maybe you have something that's just smoking good, but it's not really exactly evidence, but you just know that the other person is going to lie about something. You just know it. And maybe it's not direct evidence, they're not really threatening you, but it's something that is like you really want the judge to see if they lie, because credibility is something that you get to cross-examine them on. So, okay, so let's say you're getting the restraining order, you've got all your evidence. The other person is defending and they've got their defense. You exchange your exhibits. So you testify, you say, this is what happened, that's what happened. Maybe you have a witness and you show the evidence and you say, this is why I'm afraid of this person and this is why I want to be protected. So then the other side gets to go and say, no, I was in Atlanta, Georgia, the day
Right.
that she says that I was there with the knife threatening her cat, right? And here's proof. Here's my plane tickets. Here's me on the plane. Here's me when I got to Atlanta. Here's my Facebook post from Atlanta that day. Literally, I've had
Yeah, no, and
cases
that's
like
important.
this.
You gotta think of all of the things that could possibly, happen.
Yeah,
How are
or
you
that,
gonna win,
yeah,
you know?
like proof that there's no way maybe somebody did that, but it wasn't me. So,
Exactly.
so both sides put on their case. So you have the chance to cross-examine the person and say, oh, so you were really in Atlanta, right? You were really in Atlanta that day that you actually came by my house with a knife threatening my cat. It's like, yes, that's right. I was in Atlanta that day. Okay, and that, but you happen to have a friend who posted a selfie that day with that person a half block away from your house. And that person posted that on Facebook. They may not be willing to come in, but you've got that. That's called rebuttal evidence. And you can say, okay, isn't it true that you saw Charlene Smith at the Burger King, a half block away from my house on that date? No, I didn't. I so didn't. I did not do that. Boom. That thing goes down on the Elmo, you give them a copy of it and say, this was you, right? With Charlene Smith. She posted it on her Facebook.
Right.
Oh, I guess. Okay, so sometimes that happens. That's what's called rebuttal evidence, just to prove that the other person is just lying through their teeth. And it's very helpful. And both sides can use that. So that's why it's so important to be just truthful, just say what's important. You don't have to elaborate. You don't have to convince the judge this person is a scumbag. They don't care. The judge doesn't care. The judge isn't going to, care if the person is you know, going to vote Republican or Democrat or goes this church or that church or is
Right.
a vegan or a keto diet person. They don't care. The judge is like, do I look like I have time to hear this crap? No, I want to hear what made you afraid and why shouldn't I give a restraining order against you, Mr. or Mrs. Defendant or Respondent?
Right.
You're going to have to show me that no reasonable person would be offended. Although I like that case of the person who was flipping off in front of the doorbell. It's kind of like, well, everybody's got an opinion.
Everybody's got an opinion. Yeah, she was like, "I can't do anything about that." We have a couple other questions here. Let's do this one first. Do you have any advice for people outside of California?
Gosh, well, I'm not really giving you advice, but I can tell you this
Suggestions, let's put it that way.
suggestion. This
Suggestions.
is what you might want to do. Take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. Go and look up the statute for civil harassment.
In your
Look
state.
at the case law. When you're reading the statute, just do what I do. I'm an attorney. Sit yourself down with a cup of coffee or tea, a pencil, print the thing out, and read it. Read it out loud. Circle words that maybe you don't understand or that are confusing. I do that. Okay. I may want to know, well, what does this define? And then maybe in another part of the law, that term is defined. So look at what you can get a civil harassment restraining order for. Maybe it's only going to be for violence. In
Mm,
California, it's also a pattern of behavior that most people would find really irritating. Like maybe it's not uh, I'm going to kill you and your cat and your dog, and
Maybe it's
no.
just somebody leaving dog poop on your lawn, every
Oh
day
my
for
God.
months.
My mom once, she was trying to tell the neighbor about their big dog that would just use her. So my mom would go out and collect it. So finally, my mom said, I'm going to collect that. So she got a giant bag and she went and she tied it on their mailbox just right after the mail was delivered.
There you go.
So and she's watching from the living room where she was kind of hidden by trees. And sure enough, they came out and they were like, it was like, well, that was a satisfying moment. But,
Yeah.
you know, there are times when you can leave bags of poop on people's yard, which, because it's their dog's poop.
Sometimes
But
I've had the
getting,
idea to get
I want
flags
to, I
and just
want to
put it
get
down on the
back.
poop.
I want to get back to this person's question, and I'm sorry to make a
Sure.
joke out of it, but
No, it's okay.
because it wasn't. But what you can do is go to your local court where you can get a restraining order and ask, is there a self-help section, or is there a self-help booklet, or is there anything available that would explain the law? And also, if there's a law school near you, you might be able to find a clinic. You may also be able to find a legal aid, uh, which may be able to, they sometimes have informational programs or clinics where everybody comes in and they fill out their forms. In Orange County, we have a fabulous self help system in our courts. And I'm so proud of the county I live in and practice in, because Orange County has a wonderful, wonderful self help program for domestic violence. I think they do civil harassment, I'm not sure, but they have all kinds of self help programs, which is marvelous because most people cannot afford attorneys.
Right. Right.
And it's
Yeah.
very hard. You may be able to find a pro bono attorney uh, who would be willing to work for a reduced fee, but it's very, very hard because when you're an attorney, you still have to pay for everything. You still
Yeah.
got to pay your car bill, you got to pay your office rent, you got to pay your phone bill, you got to pay your internet, and if you have an employee, you have to pay for everything. So, uh, and you might be able to get an attorney fee award. That's the other thing with in California, if you win the restraining order, or if you can keep the person from getting a restraining order against you, you may be entitled to fees. Not entitled, but the judge may be able to award them. So that kind of keeps a stop on frivolous, vexatious actions.
Yeah, and
But
that
the
that goes
problem
right into our
is,
next question. It and you don't have to answer all of this. I mean, obviously, Google's your best friend, but is there a specific process to getting someone declared a vexatious litigant through the courts? Because
yeah,
that
you
has
have
to
to
be
do,
done through the courts, right?
yeah, you have to do a motion and you have to prove that all of these cases have been brought by this person as a pro per, and that they have lost every one of them. Even if they occasionally might have had a win, but it's like, 5, 6, 7 cases. The minimum is 5. And it can even be in that case. I've seen
Mm,
family law litigants be found to be vexatious because they have filed motions and appeals over and over and over in the same case.
mm,
And finally, the court just said, no, that's it. You're in this case, you are vexatious. You may not file anything unless you have an attorney,
right,
or unless you can convince the presiding judge of this court that you have uh, good cause.
right,
So,
right.
wow.
And another good question here. Can a temporary restraining order or restraining order be filed across state lines?
Oh, yes, in California, yes. Uh, in some states, they don't have what's called long arm jurisdiction. I don't know if it's still true, but Oregon didn't have long arm jurisdiction when I was in law school. So you couldn't get a restraining order against someone who's out of state if you were in Oregon. That may have changed. But yeah, if you're in Colorado and someone in California is hassling you, you can use the California courts. But again, it's state by state.
Right. Right. So
So,
yeah, that's where your local, state, and like even county statutes and laws will be your best friend. And it is very specific state to state. There's very few things that are applying at a federal level. And if it's at the federal level, then that would be more like the district attorney of your state dealing
well,
with
that
that,
would be
or the
more,
FBI.
well, okay. Totally different things.
Yeah.
Okay. For criminal
Mm,
harassment, okay, it's almost like you've got to be a movie star to get them involved. But,
right.
you know, I really do applaud people who are celebrities who've got the guts to go out and put a stop to stalkers because, they don't want to do this. They don't want to be stalked, but they're just people.
Yeah.
And so,
They're just trying to go to
yeah,
Target like the rest of us.
yeah, nobody wants to be targeted. So, but the FBI, I think, I mean, with a civil harassment thing, I guess that if there were actual terrorist threats of violence and awful things and it involved interstate,
Mm,
um, uh, potentially, yeah, but I would start by going to the police and saying, here, hey, I've got this ring camera with the lady with the knife threatening my
right.
cat, and
There you go.
it made me really afraid when I watched it.
Yeah.
Um, because that is actually a criminal act.
Yeah.
But if you don't have actual crimes going on that you can prove, um, they're probably not going to do much with it.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. This is an interesting question. I'm going to fill in a couple blanks here. But the question is, what if the threat is using the law to harass and lying on the paperwork? Are there things you can do about that, or you just have to go through the process to prove that like the process of, like, let's say somebody does lie, is perjurous. That would be the legal term for that, on the
Yeah.
on the initial request for a restraining order. Do you, as the respondent, have to then go through the whole process, even though it's total malarkey from the beginning?
Yes, unfortunately. Again, the good news is you probably don't need an attorney if you can prove that they're lying. Like I said, here's my ticket. I went to Georgia. I went to Atlanta, Georgia. Here's my Facebook post. I was in Atlanta, Georgia. That's evidence that you could not have been the person in the ring video with the knife
Right.
threatening Fluffy.
Right.
Okay. So, um, yeah, unfortunately, you do. And it's really a pain. And here's the other crazy thing, you could prove that they perjured themselves, you could prove it.
Yeah.
But um, you cannot sue the person for perjury. You could ask the court for attorney fees if you have an attorney, or you can ask them to pay your filing fee. And you can ask for your court costs if you kept track of them.
But you
And
can't request, like, I want this person arrested now because they committed perjury. That's not
well,
gonna
you
happen.
could you could probably say, I think that this person should be referred to the district attorney, Your Honor,
Right.
for committing perjury. But the point is, people lie and people are idiots for lying. And generally, I have seen judges get so angry with people for lying. in court. And, there's a big difference between me getting upset with someone or Nora getting upset with someone, right? Okay, we're just people, right? But a judge has authority. And when a judge is angry because his time or her time has been wasted
Yeah.
by someone who flat out lied and then maybe didn't even show up for
Right.
their hearing when they initiated the whole thing. I mean, that's like, whoa, don't do that.
Yeah.
But it's like for people to abuse the court system like that, you have no idea how much money is wasted, because every hour of court time you're paying a judge, you're paying a clerk, you're paying a sheriff,
That's the
sometimes there's
taxpayer money
another
right there.
clerk, right? You're
Yeah.
paying for the building, you're paying for the services, the lights on, the phones ringing, everything's happening,
Everything.
thousands of dollars every hour for one courtroom. And so when somebody lies, it's like as if somebody vomits in court or somebody dies in court. There's just like this sense of, wow, I can't believe that that person actually did that.
Yeah. No, it's wild. It's
Because
wild.
this is where people go to get protection.
Yeah.
And then some yo-yo is just making stuff up. Uh, and I have seen judges, especially in family court, refer people to the DA for perjury or if they forge a document.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
That's not good either. Yeah. Um,
Uh,
That's news bears. A question from Lady Jane here. Uh, how do you feel? How do you feel about the anti-slap rule, and could that be used in Nora's case? She says, in her opinion, this person is harassing her and has been harassing her for years. But if we take my case out of it, like what is anti-slap for, and is it good for a case like a restraining order or not? What's your personal opinion on that?
well, you know, anti-slap is where you're trying to keep somebody, or you're trying to sue somebody for making for doing something in court about another court case, like
Mm,
suing somebody for something that they did in a different lawsuit, or or something that they said in a different lawsuit,
right.
and or threatening litigation. Now, usually that's an attorney sending a letter saying, well, I'm going to sue you unless your client agree. I'm going to sue unless you agree to give me $10,000, or
Right.
whatever. Um, and if you just want this all to go away, you'll just give me some cash. Okay, that's really kind of shady, but under certain circumstances in California, that is actually protected speech. It's
Mm,
okay, even if there's kind of the case is a little skanky.
sure.
But um, under other circumstances, it can be actual extortion. But anti-slap, really, when you're talking about speech, protected speech is not a threat
Right.
to harm somebody.
Right.
So I don't really think that anti-SLAPP has anything really. I mean, these are very simple courtrooms. They're very good courtrooms. They have court reporters, they have a sheriff, they've got a judge, they've got a clerk. You put on evidence. The evidentiary burden is a little bit easier because they allow you to use evidence like hearsay evidence that you wouldn't otherwise be able to use. However, you have a burden of proof, clear and convincing evidence. It's not just preponderance of evidence, which is like, 51% more likely than not. No, it's got to be clearer than that, but it doesn't have to be beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
But that really does kind of that gets me the last thing. So the answer to the anti-slap thing is uh, I've actually looked at a few cases that were anti-slap and civil harassment, and they all say, "No, I'm sorry, the speech, if the speech is threatening or harassing to a level that is harassment, it's not protected speech." So, you know,
Yeah.
that you've still got to be careful with your words because
100%.
words are powerful. But I want to talk a little bit about the burden of proof.
Mm.
That in a civil harassment case with clear and convincing evidence, not only do you need to prove that the person did something, but you have to prove that it's more likely than not that they're going to continue unless they have a restraining order. Now, that's kind of tough. Like, how can you move forward? I call that Texas domestic violence law. Texas, this is the law in Texas, uh, from what family lawyers in Texas tell me. You could assault and batter your spouse in court and get arrested, and then come get the temporary restraining order and come in for the permanent restraining order. And then the abused person, usually the lady,
Yeah.
sorry guys, but they have to prove that you're going to do it again.
That's wild.
And so let's say they do it again, they get arrested, they get dragged off. As, oh, well, look, he did it again. Wow, guess what?
You still have to prove it's going to happen
You
again.
still has to prove it's like the endless
Oh my
Mobius
God.
strip. It's horrible. It's horrible. But in California, because we have a clear and convincing evidentiary standard, at least one court of appeal has found that that's enough to show that it's going to happen again. Look, there's clear and convincing evidence that this has gone on several times. And of course, it's just obnoxious, horrible behavior that would upset anybody. That's enough to prove that it's going to happen again unless there's an order.
Yeah. Yeah. Next question here. This is from Haggis Basher. She says, can you report a lawyer to the bar for filing knowingly wrong restraining orders and find the judge accountable for signing off on them without due diligence? Like the person in the clerk's office who's, reading it over to decide it's going to go to a hearing or not.
Well, no, because what due diligence? If you're reading something and it says this person says this and this person says that, and it's domestic violence or it's civil harassment, and let's say the clerk doesn't give a temporary, okay, or the judge doesn't give a temporary. You can take an emergency appeal to the Court of Appeal in California, and you can say, look, I described this course of action that this person has taken, and you can usually win it, at least in domestic violence situations. And for years, there were no domestic violence cases in the Court of Appeal. And I'm very proud to say that I took quite a few cases. And I have not had any published cases that I can remember. But now there's just like a whole world of case law on domestic violence and civil harassment, but mostly on domestic violence. So the question is, can you get a lawyer into trouble for filing it? Well, I mean, you have to, if you're an attorney and someone comes to you and says, hey, this person is saying this and doing that, you should try to see, like, are they, do they have any evidence? And
Right.
are they credible? Uh, is this the first time this happened? Is this the only time it ever happened? And you do have a duty to at least try to weed out, obvious liars or obvious people who act like if somebody says, "Look, I'm lying about this, but I just want to really hassle that person." No, you can't.
Right.
Okay. But how are you going to know? Right. How are you going to know that that's what happened? And as far as the attorney who does that and files that knowingly, eventually it'll catch up with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm as the attorney for the other person, I'm not going to go down their throat. I'm just going to be like, I want to win my case for my client and this trail of tears.
Yeah. Exactly. All right, let's well, we're gonna wrap up here, guys. Thank you for your really intelligent questions. I appreciate that. If you guys can donate to the GoFundMe, it's right over there. Or Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, all of that stuff, and that will go directly to this beautiful lady right here, Merritt Mckeon, who's my lawyer.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Every little bit helps.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
what a great group.
Yeah, no, there we got a lot of smart people here that are
Oh,
paying
great
attention and
questions.
yeah.
Great questions. And I wish that, I mean, I'd love to just sit here all day and try to answer these questions because they are really good
They are.
questions.
Well, we'll have to do this again. I mean, your knowledge of the law is very important for everybody right now, especially you know, with all the things that are going on in the world and finding out about, what's protected speech, what's not protected speech and that kind of stuff. I mean, that's we should do a topic on that just, because that's really important just for when you're protesting in general, anything,
Oh,
to
yeah.
understand that. And that's we'll do that on the next time.
Yeah.
We'll
Oh,
schedule the show
yeah.
to
We live in very chaotic, dangerous, scary times, and I
yeah,
just want everybody to feel safe. And if somebody is hassling you and somebody is living in your home that's hurting you, call a domestic violence hotline. And if they're just some coworker who's just absolutely being threatening and nasty, talk to your supervisor.
100%. 100%. Get HR involved. Do all of that. And then Tuesday we have court in the first case where I am the respondent. And then a week from Tuesday on the 4th of November is the very first hearing for my petition case. So good stuff coming up here, guys. A lot of travel, a lot of other things, but every centola, whatever, definitely goes towards all of that. So any help you guys can give is amazing. We're going to be working very, very hard to get these things done, and of course, giving you as many updates as we humanly can to let you know what's going on. Thank you so much for coming in today, Merritt, and discussing all this with everybody. It's fabulous having you on. Um, and any final words before we end off here?
No, just, be happy, be safe, eat right.
Exactly.
Take your vitamins, eat
Take
your
your
vegetables.
there you go, guys. As well as following the law, eat well and take your vitamins. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love you. Thank
Bye.
you always to my mods for being the best mods in the business, and thank you to my members. And I will see you all on